What's up, YouTube? You're watching Steel City Motovlogs, and I'm your host, Derek T. And hey, listen, today I'm doing this episode just a little bit differently. And the reason why is because I found some footage from somewhere, and I had no idea what my plan was for it. I don't remember it being in any of my previous episodes. I think I was just kind of riding around. I don't know what I was doing. I can't find any matching footage. This is actually what I would consider B-reel footage because it's being taken with the Akaso Brave 8 and it's facing me. And so I don't even have the matching GoPro footage to match it, like from the camera that's on the front of my helmet. So I really have no idea where this footage came from, but I said, hey, I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to go on and make a video out of it. And so I found a topic to talk about, and let's get into that topic right now. So what I want to talk about is just kind of reminisce for a little bit on what it was like for me to learn how to ride. I started back in roughly about 2019 or so, and I bought this bike right here. That's a 2005 Yamaha V-Star. You've seen this picture in other videos before, and even the way that I came across the bike was just, really unexpected. Like, I'm talking about when I woke up that day, I wasn't at all thinking that I was going to purchase a motorcycle that day. What ended up happening was, out of my curiosity, I went out to a Harley Davidson dealership and was looking through their used stuff, just out of pure curiosity. And I wanted a Suzuki Bergman. Let me show you that. This was a Suzuki Bergman Executive that I was looking at. And I had a friend of mine who told me, hey, Derek, if you're going to buy a bike. Don't settle for a scooter. And my whole thing on it was, I don't know how to ride a manual transmission. The Bergman had plenty of power and could keep up on the highway. I could probably tour with it if I wanted to. Where there's a will, there's a way. This is what I was thinking. And it has an automatic transmission, right up my alley. Didn't have to learn how to ride a manual. And so I thought I would get away with just buying the automatic and going for it. But I got convinced to go with a manual transmission. This same exact friend was at another Harley Davidson dealership, no joke, about an hour away from where I was. And so me being pretty much crazy, having lost my mind, I got in the car and drove an hour out to the Harley Davidson dealership where that friend was. And he was showing me this bike, and he was kind of like, Derek, if you don't buy this bike, I think I'm going to buy it, And so I really got talked into it that day. Went on jumped through all the hoops, and picked the bike up a couple days later. And the funny thing was, I couldn't even ride the bike home. They took a picture of me, and I have been searching all over the place for this picture. I can't find it anywhere. But they took a picture as kind of like another satisfied customer. It was me, big Harley Davidson logo behind me. And they were sitting there taking all these pictures of me. And they were like, okay, we want to get a quick video of you just turn the bike on, rev it up, and kind of ride out of the garage. There's a little garage area and into the parking lot. They just want to see me ride off. It's just something that they did. I kid you all not, I couldn't even ride it out of the garage because I kept stalling. No joke, I stalled the bike probably 30 times trying to give them this shot. And I just couldn't do it. Could not do it. So I ended up having a friend of mine. I had to leave the bike there. And I actually had a friend of mine to come back with me the next day, and he rode the bike home. That Harley Davidson dealership is probably about 40 to 45 minutes away from my house. And so there was no getting on the highway for me and riding it all the way home. I had to get a friend to do that. I think it was halfway raining outside that day, and I picked him up from work, and he handled it like a champ. He just, we rode it back to his house, and the learning process kind of started from there. Okay, so we got that bike back to my friend's house, and we took it there because he had a garage and I didn't. The place I was living in at the time didn't have a garage, and it was a rainy day. So we took it back to his house, and even though the rain had kind of passed by, it was still kind of wet outside and everything else. And we weren't sure what it was going to do overnight. I was like, can I just keep it in your garage? We'll figure all this stuff out. Tomorrow we'll take it to an empty parking lot and get started. And he said, sure. So we went to his house and we sat there in his front yard, at the top of his driveway. And I was like determined, I'm going to get this thing into first gear before I leave this bike overnight. And I'm sleeping on it all night. The fact that I couldn't even engage the clutch properly. I'm going to do this at least one time, and I'm going to go around the block. And after about maybe 30 or 40 more times of stalling out and everything else and starting the bike back up, bike cutting off, starting it back up and everything else, what ended up happening, eventually the bike stopped starting up. So it got to a point where I was like, okay, I embarrassed myself at the dealership because I couldn't ride off into the sunset the way they wanted me to. And then now the bike is home almost an hour away from the dealership. And now it's not even working anymore. Not only have I not learned how to ride it, but I broke it. So I go home and I spend the entire night, completely sleepless night, thinking of ways that I can get this bike back out to the dealership and get my money back. Like, can I unsign these papers that I signed? That's how much, I was discouraged from the process. But nonetheless, was able to call somebody who at that time I didn't know. I was referred to him by a couple of friends who knew him as a good mechanic, and he's my friend Brian Sanders. You know him from a couple videos ago. We did a video about his Victory Vision, and that was actually the day that I met him. He actually came to the house where the bike was, and we were able to get it jumped. What ended up happening to the bike was, because it was stalling so much, because I was stalling it, it had nothing to do with the bike. It had everything to do with the rider, or the lack of riding knowledge. We had burned the battery out. The battery was just dead from doing those starts over and over again. So he was able to jump the bike, and we took it to his house, which was about probably 15, 20 minutes away from where the bike was located. So I had to go pick him up, take him to the house where the bike was. He rode the bike. I followed him in my car over to his house, and he gave the bike a once over. I dropped it off. I left it with him for a little while. I went and did some things, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get this bike to my house. I can't leave this bike. Now it's at a complete stranger's house. I can't leave it there. He's going to call me and say, okay, this is what you owe. Your bike's good. You're ready to go. When you coming to get your bike? And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is really going to be make or break time, because I'm going to have to ride this bike home. I ended up getting an Uber to go back out to his house. So I'm there and I'm talking to him, and I just got flat honest. I was like, dude, I need to know how to release this clutch, because I'm not going to get to the stop sign that's 5 houses down from your house without knowing how to do this. And so, he gave me a couple practice runs, and he was the one that really taught me how to get that bike moving, and gave me some little tips and tricks and everything else. In about maybe 5 or 6 minutes, he had me riding up and down the street, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, go up and down, come back, turn around, go up and down. Then he finally said, "Are you ready to go?" Because I guess he was ready for me. I think he was ready for me to go. I was like, yeah, I think I got this, and I took it to my house. But in order to get there, I knew there was going to be some highway time involved, and so I was able to find some back roads. I'm glad I know my way around that area. I was able to find some back roads and stay on some back roads to get the bike home. But that was a challenge too. As long as I was moving, I was fine. But red lights and stop signs, I was signaling people to come around me and everything else, because I kept on stalling. But eventually I figured it out, and I was able to get the bike at least to my place where I could do some practicing with it. So as the days and weeks went by, I started getting more and more comfortable with my riding, to where I was riding around with other people, hanging out with friends and stuff like that, doing little stuff, kicking around the city. And, I was starting to get a little bit more comfortable, but not much. It became obvious that I was the one who was lacking the experience in the group. And, the more and more, the farther and farther people wanted to go, the more and more uncomfortable I got. And actually, I had one particular incident where, sitting at the bottom of a hill, getting ready to pull out into traffic, but there was a bunch of gravel down at the bottom of the hill, and I slid on the gravel, and the bike went down, and I was in the middle of an intersection, cars coming and everything else. Like, it was just, it was a bad look. But, I managed to get out of that in one piece. Nothing terrible happened. Scraped the bike up a little bit, but better than scraping myself up. So that was okay for a while. I started learning how to ride with other people. But again, the struggle was there, and people were just more experienced. And I noticed one thing, that even though people were more experienced, I wasn't getting very many tips and very many hints from people. But I did become the subject of a lot of funny stories that other people were telling. And so, it got to a point where I was like, okay, hee hee ha ha. If I'm going to really learn how to ride this thing, I'm going to have to do it on my own. I can't do it in a crowd, and I can't do it around people. I need to be taught. I don't need to be laughed at. And so I really, really believe that a lot of my preference in terms of riding alone, other than me being an introvert, and I talk about that in a lot of other videos, but that really had a lot to do with that figured into the kind of rider that I am today, 3 years later, not on a V-Star, but on a Goldwing. That figures a lot into my desire to be a solo rider. All right, you all. So that's pretty much my story of how I got started riding, and my process of kind of learning how to ride the bike and become the rider that I am, and the rider that I'm slowly but steadily becoming. I figured it would be a good topic to, number one, put against, like I said, this footage that I found, and I don't know what I'm doing with this footage. It just kind of came out of nowhere. So I wanted to make sure I got a chance to use the footage, number one. And number two, I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine about how we got started riding. And so I figured it would be a pretty good topic for a video like this one. So this one's a little bit shorter than usual, but hey, thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't already subscribed, but you like the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button in the right-hand corner of your screen. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. I'm Derek T, and you're watching Steel City Motovlogs.